Welcome back to my channel. I'm Joe with Smokin Joe's Pit BBQ. On today's video, I'm going to be smoking up a Texas style brisket on my Grill Grills Kamado style cooker. Stay tuned. All right, let's get started on this brisket cook. Always wear hand protection, protect your 10 fingers, and don't forget about your clean space gloves, your nitrile gloves. Keep your hands nice and clean. If you guys are interested in getting some of these Clean Space Project gloves, check out the link below and get a nice discount. Order a few cases of these gloves, and these are the exact same gloves that I use on my food truck as well. All right, so what I'm starting with is a 19-pound Creekstone brisket. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about Creekstone. Super premium briskets. Now this brisket right here is a choice brisket, but it is their upper 2/3 choice, which many times looks just like a prime brisket. And it's a big boy. There's the Creekstone logo, and this is a certified Black Angus brisket. And again, this is a 19-pound brisket. So I'm just gonna dry up the surface a little bit. Now, anytime that I trim a brisket, I always start on the flat side by removing this large decal. And if you wanna make beef tallow, you definitely wanna hold on to this. In my case, I'm not gonna make beef tallow, so I'm just gonna toss this in the trash. Let's get in there and take most of this decal off. And this is a flexible dowel strong knife, which makes it super easy. I'm gonna trim this brisket, make it nice and round. Now these beefy pieces I will save to make sausage. Still got a little bit more decal in there. Remove a lot of this fat on the surface, as well as the silver skin. You don't have to take all of it, but you definitely want to take off the fat. The silver skin I'm not so worried about. Check out that marbling. Again, this is a choice brisket. I'm gonna go ahead and round off this point a little bit. Again, you want this brisket as aerodynamic as possible. Even though the Kamado style cooker is gonna cook from the bottom up, I still want that round looking brisket. Really nice, oval shaped, if you will. All right, so that's about all I'm gonna do on this top side of the brisket. Now, if you see this fat and silver skin, I'm gonna leave that alone because it's pretty thin. I'm probably gonna be trimming this off anyway, so I'm not even gonna worry about taking that off right now. So let's flip this bad boy over. All right, let's trim up this fat cap. Now I'm gonna trim up this brisket exactly how I trim it on my food truck. And I gotta tell you, ever since I started my food truck, I have learned that not one brisket is the same. Every single brisket is different. There's all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Now the overall result is the same, the shape of it is. And I'm gonna go through the process of that. So on this side right here, you have this mohawk and you have this fat pocket right here. So this is where I start. You can see on the side, and this is where I start. And I want to completely remove that mohawk, okay? Take that down. And all of this gets saved for sausage, okay? Now you do have a heavier fat pocket, which I will take this off, but the majority of this mohawk is all meat, and I save this for making my sausage. So from this point, I just shave it down a little bit more, remove some of that fat, and a little bit more of that meat. And what I do right here on this fat cap is just look at the side and see how much fat to meat you have. Now you can tell right here on this hump that I've got quite a bit of fat on this fat cap. So what I do here is just start to trim and round off this brisket a little at a time. And if I see meat, that's kind of where I stop. Now this point is a little weird, so I'm gonna remove a little bit more of this and round it off as well. If not, it's just gonna burn. Now you can feel how hard the fat is. So that tells me that I can still remove some more of the fat. Come down to that edge. You can see that I scalped it a little bit right here. It's not too bad. Now when something like this happens, don't worry too much about it, as long as it's not too big of a gash. But that kind of tells you how thick that fat cap is and how much fat you can take off before you get down to that meat. So just take off a little bit at a time. I'm going to take a slight edge off of this just to get rid of some of that oxidized meat. There we go. Now you can see exactly how much fat you have right here. Now right now we have about a 1/2 inch. I'm going to trim that down to about 1/4 inch. Keep your knife nice and flat. All right, so I'm down to about 1/4 inch right here on this fat. So that's exactly where I'm going to stop. Now I'm just going to clean up this top a little bit more. So as you can see, the meat does get a little bit thin, and every brisket is different, but this one is a little bit thin on this edge right here. So I'm just going to take this down and round it off just a little bit. Start right here, get to the thin part, and start to round it off. And again, this does not go to waste. All right, this brisket is looking great. This flat is a little bit thicker right here on this edge. Let me just clean this up just a little bit more. But you notice we have a nice round brisket, nice and oval. That way that smoke is gonna go all the way around this brisket. Now on the Kamado style cooker, the heat is gonna come from the bottom. So I'm gonna be smoking this with the fat cap down. That way it protects the meat. Now if you remember earlier, I did say that I wasn't gonna trim this because I was gonna remove most of it. I still have a little bit, which you can leave on or take it off. I'm gonna go ahead and remove some of this. All right, so I'm just gonna move this brisket aside and we'll get our rub together. Stay tuned. All right, let's put our rub together. I'm starting with 1/2 cup of 16 mesh black pepper, 1/4 cup of kosher salt, and 1/8 cup of granulated garlic. All right, mix this rub up really well. All right, starting with a fat cap because the flat is going to be our presentation side. Going to add a little bit of yellow mustard as a binder. All right, let's add some of our rub. No shaker bottle needed. All right, let's season up the presentation side or the flat side. A little bit more yellow mustard. And apply the rub. All right, so the brisket is nicely seasoned. Let's head outside and fire up that Grill Grills Kong. Stay tuned. All right, I'm outside of my Grill Grills Kong, and as you can see, I do have a little bit of spent charcoal in here. I already shook the ash off with my basket, and I am going to add a little bit more Jealous Devil lump charcoal. Got some monster chunks in here, which is perfect. All right, let's light up that Jealous Devil charcoal. I am using the grill gun from Grill Blazer. Check out the link below if you guys don't already have one. This thing is a lifesaver and so easy to use. All right, that only took about a minute. I'm gonna let these coals get nice and red, and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so the coals have been going for about 15 minutes now. I'm gonna add a very small split of post oak from Gourmet Wood Products. Check them out at Academy Sports and Outdoors. You can find these small splits if you have an offset or a Kamado style cooker. They are perfect. I'm going to install my heat diffuser. All right, so next I'm going to install our bottom grate. And I'm also going to be installing our top grate. All right, I'm going to close the lid and let this warm up to 275 degrees, and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so the Kong has been warming up for about 20 minutes now, and it got up to 275 degrees. So let's load up this beauty of a brisket. Look at that. As you can see, I did add a small piece of foil on the bottom grate just to catch all the drippings and try to keep the Kong nice and clean. All right, I'm going to close the lid. On the intake side, I do have 3 dots showing. In the exhaust, I'm going to set it at the halfway mark and let it come up to 275, And then if I have to adjust it, I'll close the exhaust and the intake just a little bit. I'll see you guys back in about 2.5 hours. Stay tuned. All right, so it's been 2 hours since we first loaded our brisket, and this gate is rocking steady at 275 degrees. By the way, I do have the exhaust about 3/4 of the way between 0 and 1, and the intake, I got it with 3 holes showing. So let's look at this brisket. All right, so far, not a whole lot going on. Got some nice bark building up right here where the decal was at. But other than that, man, that brisket is looking good. I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm not even gonna spritz. I'm gonna give this a couple more hours, rocking at 275 degrees. We'll come back, take a look at the color, and get an internal temperature. Stay tuned. All right, so we are 4 hours into the cook. Let's take a look at our brisket and see how it's looking. All right, as you can see, that bark is looking really nice. It did split open here a little bit. That's an indication that it does get a little bit hot right here on these corners. But you know what? That bark is still nice and soft. I'm gonna go ahead and spritz it with the apple cider vinegar and water. Now, one thing you gotta be careful with these Kamado style cookers is how long you leave the lid open, because the temperature can rise really quick. So you wanna be careful with that. Give it a good spritz. I'm gonna go ahead and install my probe right here, right in the middle, right in between the flat and the point. Man, that's feeling tender already. And we're sitting at 149 degrees, right smack in the middle of that brisket. I do want to get the brisket up to around 170. That's going to give us the opportunity to build a little bit darker bark. So I'm going to give this probably another hour, and I'll bring you guys right back. Stay tuned. All right, so we are at the 6-hour mark, and take a look at this brisket. Super nice bark. Man, that is very nice. And the aroma that's coming off of this brisket is amazing. So I'm just gonna wrap this up. I'm not putting any tallow or anything in it. I think it's juicy enough. I'm using peach butcher paper, and I'm using 2 sheets, and I did fold the center over just so it doesn't leak any juice. Wrap it up really nice and tight. All right, so I'm gonna pop this brisket back inside my Kong that's still running at 275 degrees. And I gotta tell you, that thing is consistent. Once it finds 275 degrees, I just adjust the vents and it stays there all day long. I am loving it. So I'll let you guys know exactly how long it takes to come up to temperature and get really nice and tender. Stay tuned. All right, so the brisket is finally ready. I do have some trivets right here, and I pulled the brisket and placed it on this aluminum pan. And the internal temperature, again, I just pulled it, is 201 degrees, right smack in the middle of this brisket. So I'm gonna let the brisket cool down to about 160 degrees. I'm gonna hold this inside my PK100 smoker at 150 degrees for 12 hours, and we'll slice into it tomorrow morning. Stay tuned. All right, so it's the very next morning, and I did hold the brisket for 12 hours at 150 degrees inside my PK100 smoker. Let's take a look at it and see how we did. I gotta tell you, I feel it's like Christmas every time I unwrap a brisket. It smells so good, feels super tender. Oh man, she's pretty. Oh man, and she's tender. Remember, the fat cap is on the bottom on this brisket. Look at that. Let's grab some of our brisket juices or tallow. Pour it on top of that brisket. You gotta save the juices, right? All right, so first impressions on my Grill of Grills Kong brisket is it's beautiful, okay? Got really nice bark all the way around that brisket, no bald spots. It looks fantastic, and I wish you guys could smell this. Let's slice right into it, right here in the middle. Get that money shot. Oh man, it feels extremely tender. Look at that. Oh yes. And the fat cap again is on the bottom, and it's still really nice and juicy. Check that baby out. That flat is absolutely gorgeous as well. Really nice and juicy. Man, I am loving this Creekstone brisket. All right, so I'm gonna take a couple of slices off of that point. Give that a taste. Man, it's super tender. I am loving it. I cannot wait to taste this brisket. All right, so there's our point. Gonna take a few slices off of our flat as well. Oh man, she wants to fall apart. I mean, look at that. Pulls apart, super tender. Let's give this bad boy a taste. All right, so first, I'm gonna give the flat a try. Check that out. Super nice and juicy, nice and tender. Look at that bark. That is absolutely savage. Here we go. Man, this brisket has a super tasty backyard flavor that is absolutely delicious. It's not like an offset. I gotta tell you, it's a flavor of its own. That bark where all our seasoning is at is absolutely perfect. All right, so now let's try our point and see how we did. Look at that, a little bit of a smoke ring. I could have added a little bit more wood to get a bigger smoke ring, but I gotta tell you, that Jealous Devil by itself gives these briskets an amazing flavor. I'm gonna get that really barky piece. Check that out, here we go. That is money. Now this was my first time ever doing a brisket on my Grilla Grills Kong, and I've got to tell you, I am loving that flavor. As I mentioned earlier, it's not like an offset. It's more of a backyard flavor that is absolutely delicious, and that bark is to die for. So I've done several cooks on my Grilla Grills Kong, and every time that I cook on it, the food comes out tasting so good. It's extremely efficient. You just dial in that intake and the exhaust, and it will hold that temperature for a very long time. If you guys are interested in getting the Grilla Grills Kong, check out the link below and get yourself a nice discount. And remember that if you do get one, use a good quality lump charcoal like Jealous Devil. You get that really nice flavor on your proteins. It is absolutely delicious. I hope you guys enjoyed this brisket video. If this is your first time to my channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. Until next time, Joe with Smokin Joe's Pit Barbecue. See ya. Man, I gotta get me another barky piece.